Evening, everyone, and welcome to Just a Little Bit and our Wednesday free play sessions where we explore new games and systems. Tonight, we're going to be running a session 0 of our new series, Proclaimers of Heroes, which we're going to be building together using the Cortex rule systems. Proclaimers is set in a mythical ancient Greece where monsters and heroes are more than just tales. The Greek gods watch from on high, while their mortal agents enact their will and grow their influence. Our players, in particular, will be taking on the roles of the Musae, mortals who have been plucked from their previous lives and chosen as champions by the Muses. Goddesses of the arts and history, there are few tales as widespread and influential as those of great heroes and their mighty deeds. As such, each Musae is given a vital charge. They are to search the lands on the words of the gods and the oracles to find future heroes and forge them from a simple hero into a legend, whether they like it or not. For fate calls on those it chooses, not those who choose it. So for tonight, we're going to be doing a session 0. What that means is that we're going to talk over a little bit about the world that we're playing in, Proclaimers of Heroes, so that everyone sort of has the same level to set on. And then we're going to be talking about a little bit of the mechanics that we chose. Cortex is really modular, which is great because there's a lot of different ways you can alter the game very simply by picking and choosing which pieces you'd like to use in play. So we're going to talk a little bit about which we're using and how we flavored them to really fit an ancient Greek setting so we can have a lot of fun. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to have everybody sort of just introduce themselves, and to kind of give a little teaser, they're going to introduce themselves and talk about the character that they're thinking of and which of the muses they're followers of.
Hi everyone, I'm Bandit, use he, him pronouns. So far, I'm going to be playing Phoebe, uses she, her pronouns. She was abandoned as a baby and raised by the priestesses of Delphi and tutored in the temple at the temple for the oracle at Delphi. Curious and spirited, tall, blonde with unusually violet eyes. Oh, and she was chosen by Calliope, muse of epic poetry.
I'm Chase. I use he, him pronouns. I'll be playing Christos Katsopoulos, our wonderful Greek playboy, chosen by Talia, the goddess of comedy. Think young. What is his name?
John Stamos.
John Stamos. Think young John Stamos, but inhabited by the being of like a 30-something super homosexual drag queen. Yeah, I think that's a good background.
I'm Joey. I use they, them pronouns, and I'll be playing Antigone, who is the Musae of Melitmene, the muse of tragedy. She's former Spartan, and she's beautiful and empathic and capable and strong. The only thing she can't be is trusted. Y'all are welcome.
Hi, I'm Tay. I use he, him, and they, them pronouns. I'll be playing Nico Florakis, who is from the Isle of Crete. Nico is not quiet, but not loud. He uses he, him, and they, them pronouns. Nico tends to speak more through their words and through their written word, as well as a little bit more of their lyrical word. They are the chosen musae of Erato, the muse of erotic poetry, and also apparently miming, according to some websites.
Nico will be communicating exclusively through the art of mime, which Christos will be translating for us.
I say now you have to give your entire intro again, but only via miming. Go.
And moving on.
I have some melons to sell. Would you like my melons? I will sell you these melons and write you a receipt.
My name is Zach. I use he, him pronouns, and I will be playing Theodora, who uses she, her pronouns. She is a musae for Cleo, the muse of history. And a little bit of her background, she comes from a very wealthy family in Thebes, but she kind of has an issue with authority, specifically old white men in Athens who try to tell her that she cannot join the schools that she wants to join. And she may have then posted not so nice things around town about them, and had to leave. And that's when Cleo found her. And yeah, so her whole thing is she wants to try to tell the stories of those that history forgets.
Excellent. And as the narrator, I'll be taking on the role of a lot of other people, including the muses themselves, as we go into the game. So, as I mentioned, what's great about Cortex is it's super modular, but one of the things that sort of persists between every game is the distinctions. Distinctions serve as short little statements or ways to basically to define your character that then become a mechanic that you can use regularly in the game. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have everyone start building their distinctions. What's great is the first distinction everyone's kind of already hinted at. Each of them has for their first distinction, Proclaimer of Heroes, which allows them to use a special ability called a special effect, which allows them to give over what mechanic we're using, hero dice, to a hero to help them be better and inspire them as a muse should. So they've already made a big choice, which was listing which of the muses they have chosen. So each of them is now tied to their muse, and that's going to affect how they play in the game. Next distinction, our second one, is going to be a little bit about their background. And so we're going to go through everybody, and they're going to let us know what their distinction is that is about who they were before they were chosen by a muse to become a musai.
Okay. So for Phoebe, I went with Child of Delphi because as a baby, she had weird eyes, so her parents just abandoned her at the temple. And so she was raised just by the priestesses there at the temple who served the oracle. And the oracle being kind of just this random girl who smells some weird gas from inside the earth and has prophetic visions for a while. But then a lot of the priests and priestesses would be like really trained in a lot of different topics. So Phoebe kind of had a very wide breadth of knowledge given to her, just being raised in the temple at Delphi. So
Right.
That's her background.
Excellent. And then we'll move on to Christos.
The first distinction I picked was actor of renown. Christos, before being tapped by the muses, was an aspiring actor, although probably not that good. So didn't quite always find ways to make ends meet and such, and so kind of, actor of renown is kind of a play on the fact that you probably didn't make enough coin to live as an actor, but had a good heart and tried real hard at it.
So for Antigone, her distinction is Spartan priestess. So Antigone was born in Sparta and was expected to do all the things a good Spartan woman would do, which is marry a man, give him lots of children, and die in the process. She said fuck that and gave up her original name and took the name Antigone and ran off to a temple of Artemis, where as long as she was inside, they couldn't take her away. And so until Melipmene, which I have no idea how to say that name, found her, she was an active priestess of Artemis. Oh, the temple was on the Isle of Lesbos. I forgot to mention that. They're lesbians, Harold.
I know you don't know
Lesbian.
Sappho.
I do not know Sappho. Stop asking.
Fitting. And Tay.
So if I'm doing this right, Nico, I was going to call his background voice behind a face. And he has, since a very young age, had a gift for, even before becoming a muse, or become a musei, had a way with his words, especially for making people feel good about them. And so he used to be older child, teenager, young adult that a lot of the wealthy in Crete would either force or hire to help them woo whoever they wanted to woo. So he was kind of like the script preparer, the for the wealthy in Crete. And then got picked up by a muse after that.
So, like, very ancient Greek Cyrano de Bergerac.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm glad you said it because I can never pronounce that.
Yeah. If you it's a reference, you can look it up if you're not familiar. It might help you with your character, actually.
Very large nose.
French literature. And then Zach.
And Nico does not have a large nose.
Good to know.
1 second. I'm like trying to like look between an iPad and a computer. And also, wait, this is distinctions. I'm sorry, I got a little.
No, totally fine. This is why we have a session 0, so we can talk through everything together. So yeah, this would be your distinction, and specifically, this is your background / like occupation, who you were before your muse showed up and was like, "I've got a job for you," and an offer you can't refuse.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I kind of like alluded to it already that she came from Thebes, wealthy merchant, daughter of a wealthy merchant. Her parents realized very early on that like she was not going to just get married off and like be quiet about it. So to save them from embarrassment, they tried to ship me off to Athens to be like, go serve in a temple. Don't make any noise. Theodore went along with it because she was like, great, I can get the fuck out of Thebes, go to Athens, learn, study under all these great like sophists, and then went to apply and they all were like, a woman? No. And she was like, oh. The way I kind of think of her is like a more sarcastic version of Evie from The Mummy. Like she's all about learning, but she's also like not gonna let anyone like step all over her because she's had enough like people in her life trying to tell her what to do. And she basically was like, fine, if I can't find a proper teacher here, I'm just gonna keep walking until I find someone who can teach me. And that's when she ran into Cleo. Because Cleo saw like a kindred spirit. She was like, you know what? You can help me.
Excellent. So that is everybody's background sort of put into a very flexible tag. So what distinctions means is that you now have a D8 dice that you could potentially toss into any roles you're making as we progress the story, in particular when they're relevant to being a Spartan priestess, being the voice behind a face, etc., etc. So it sort of helps us define your character, put some mechanics to it, but not be as crunchy as like D&D.
Oh, I forgot my one-line tag for that is not correct.
I love that. All right, so we got your backgrounds. Now your next is your quirk. If you stood next to anybody else who's kind of has a similar background to you, some of you have unique backgrounds, but what is the thing about that you as a person that makes you stand out or be different? And so you can do the same thing, kind of just go around and see what everyone's quirk is going to be.
Yeah, this one's not quite as settled, but I think generally the idea is, I wrote down curious for knowledge. Phoebe is a bit of a head in the clouds, cloud cuckoo lander, kind of ditzy girl a little bit, which, you know, paired with the fact that she kind of sees things in a meta perspective, she kind of comes across as very asymmetrical at times and just kind of odd. She's an odd duck. So that's kind of her quirk, is just that she's just a little bit odd.
I like that. And what about Christos?
So Christos's quirk is, my working title is Reading is Fundamental. The ability to be an honest and truthful soul, but realizing that as a poor street beggar, you probably can't always say exactly what you want to the nobleman who's offering you money for stuff. So being able to shove in a a sly jab or a quick-witted bit of humor to appease some of the stress that you're building up instead.
I was gonna say, some of you in this party built sarcastic characters I would never have imagined.
It's like the things you want to say to the customer that you can't say because you'll get fired, but having the skill to still say it anyway.
That brings us to Joey.
I've quickly learned that Antigone is going to be the mom friend and the people wrangler of the group. I'm going to be the one who's like, no, we got places to go. Antigone's quirk is always look on the brighter side of death. Antigone, despite having a rather rough life up till this point, is generally pretty cheery and just positive and just like, in love with the idea of life, especially when it comes to the subject of death. So they're like that Morticia Adams, like, they say on foggy nights you can still hear the screaming. It's a shame it's clear out. Like, just very here for a gruesome, grim, spooky time.
Excellent.
Not here for a long time, here for a good time.
No, both. I believe in living long and well.
And Tay.
Okay, so the working title I currently have for Nico's quirk is Disjointed Innocence. So even though they've always had this like way for words and this like ability to make people feel sexy and
turn people on with a poem.
They themselves have this just like demeanor of this like little, not cherub, but like super innocent that like belies a lot of their like tumultuous storming seas of sexy feelings underneath. But that's not the energy they give off.
I was gonna say, is this an autobiographical choice? But okay. Continue. Reading is fundamental.
Self-insert TTRPG.
What are we inserting?
Oh, jeez. And continuing on to Zach.
Oh, God. So, I need to come up with a good, like, one line for my quirk because I haven't thought of, like, a good witty thing yet for it. But, like, part of her quirk is kind of, like, the fact that she, like, never really, like, fit in, like, with the traditional role that she was supposed to have in the family. She always kind of, like, was where she wasn't supposed to be, like, hanging out, like spying on her brother's studies and, like, watching them fight and, like, doing, like, almost, like, tomboyish stuff in a way, but, like, feeling like this she was not, like, a quiet, like, I'm just gonna get married to someone and, like, go have babies and be done. So I need to think of, like, a good saying for that, which if anyone has a good
that's
black
a
sheep of the family.
I was also going to say not black sheep of the family. Another good choice might be broke the mold.
Ooh, I do like that.
Because like as a distinction that you can roll in the game, it would really apply anytime you're trying to like do things that people wouldn't think you'd be able to do because you're a woman in ancient Greece.
I love it.
What about well-behaved women rarely make history?
Ooh.
That was, I was gonna say, ahead of her time.
I mean, well-behaved women rarely make history is
That is
really
a good one.
fitting because you have you're following the muse of history. So like you said the title in the movie now.
Exactly. No, it's perfect.
But that's why, it's a good thing about Session 0, feel everything out. So we've got some serious characters, we've got some funny characters. We've got some
Which one am I?
innocent characters. Obviously the innocent one.
Of course, Antigone's never done an evil thing in her life.
I feel like Antigone says that and just like glances off camera.
I say that as I have a poison knife in somebody.
It's the fourth wall, like.
I mean, we'll learn this later. Antigone carries around poison, not to poison people, but to plant it on other people.
Fair.
Or
Alright,
to
so
poison people. The night's young.
That covers our distinctions, which are generally like in any situation where we're going to sit down and roll some dice, your distinction's always going to come into play. So those kind of cover you as a person, you as a character. Like I said, we're doing the 3, the Proclaimers of Heroes with your muse, your background, and your quirk, subject to change if it's a little too narrow with the muses taking up one of your slots for your distinction. What we're going to do is they would also normally have a special effect. These are ways that you as a character can either gain or spend plot points to do something to the game. Everybody's ability distinction has this special effect hinder, where you can choose to roll, instead of the D8 that they are normally, a D4, risking a worse result, but you get a plot point. I, as the narrator, can also trigger your hinder and make you roll it and give you a plot point. So it can either be your choice or my choice. We're going to get some more special effects, but I figure we're going to roll back to that as we move through the session 0. And we're going to do the same thing with abilities, because those are sort of like the crowning pieces of your character. What we're going to move on to next is attributes. And so that's what this is going to do. Is this is one of the modules we picked. We pulled attributes as an option, and it's going to reflect your mental, physical, and spiritual abilities as a dice. And if you don't mind pulling up the character sheet so you can take a look at it. Bandit, member of our cast, was kind enough to make a very awesome custom character sheet for us to help us organize, and it might be a little bit easier as we go through and talking about this to actually be able to see.
Barnaby is very enthusiastic about this character sheet. He knows how amazing it is.
He's been telling strangers on the sidewalk how good it is all day. He cannot contain his love of spreadsheets.
You there! Come look at this!
Come look at my spreadsheets. And so what we have for all of our characters is something that they're going to be thinking about. We won't make you sit through all of the number crunching side of it, but just to think about it for your characters. We have attributes, which reflect their abilities, and then the values, which reflects the social values and morals that kind of guide them as a character. Always be used when they are rolling something. Every character will always be pulling out a distinction, an attribute, and a value.
We're having technical dog difficulties.
I was going to say, while you're taking care of Barnaby, I can just read through what we're using for attributes.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, let's do that thing.
So for this, just because I've been working on this character sheet for 2 days, I'm very excited about it. It was a lot of fun to do. So for attributes, we went with athleticism, which is just kind of your physical power, reaction time, hand-eye coordination, speed, all that good stuff, as well as endurance. So that's more like your resistance, durability, that sort of thing.
Nico knows all about that.
She would, definitely, as a Spartan. I'm assuming Phoebe will probably have high stats for ingenuity, as that's our ability to use reason, logic. We also have logos, utterance, expressing inward thought. This is kind of persuasiveness, your ability to influence emotions. We have senses, which is also known as awareness, your perception of your surroundings, basically your ability to know what's going on. As well as spirit, your mental, emotional fortitude and reserves, and as well as supernatural awareness and resistance. So those are the attributes we're using for this game.
And so the big difference from a lot of other ones is we're not splitting your physical strength and your agility apart. As muses, their goal and their job is to put the focus on the heroes. And so while their physical abilities come into play, they are not so much the ones who are always putting their bodies at risk, but they are helping heroes to stand out from the crowd. So they still have to be athletic, but it's not as fine and important for us. So instead we wanted to open up the opportunity for it to be more about their awareness, their ingenuity, their spirit, and their persuasiveness, essentially. And I will just say, if everyone wants to say, since the way we're doing it is 2 of their stats get a very high die, one gets a very low, and the others get to kind of balance out. So I'm curious, what is everyone picking as their best stat and their worst stat?
Is this for abilities or for values? Because
This is for attributes. So I'm talking about your 6s versus your 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when you said low die, I thought you meant the 4, which only the other one had.
Oh, no,
Wait,
that's only, sorry.
Was I supposed to have a 4?
We're not in values yet. But yeah, so what is your 10 and what is your 6s?
Yeah, I think probably for Phoebe, her 10 will probably be Spirit, actually, as she's going to be kind of a meta character in that she'll know who the players are in a given story as she sees it. She sees the world in story. So I think her Spirit is probably going to be pretty high. I would say... I think her athleticism, speaking of which, will probably be her lowest. Just raised in the temple, not a lot of emphasis on physicality and stuff like that.
And what about you, Christos?
So I went with my 10 in Logos. Persuasiveness, ability to influence emotions and such. And currently my 6s are in Ingenuity and Senses. But I kind of been debating wiggling some things around.
Antigone?
My 10 is in Spirit. And then my 6s are in Endurance and Logos, because while Antigone's powers do also influence emotion, theirs are more about force of presence and just hitting you in the face with raw negative emotion rather than trying to persuade you to feel a certain way. I'm just going to make you feel bits. Like, I'm going to make you feel sad, and you're not going to know why.
And Rico?
Nico's 10 will also be Logos, because influencing emotions, erotic love, etc., etc. And their 6s, at this point, I'm thinking Ingenuity, because they don't necessarily have to use a lot of, there's not always a lot of reason when it comes to love, erotic love. Probably athleticism is going to be pretty low.
Okay, so not the athletic bunch so much.
That's what I'm here for.
What, us creating non-athletic characters? Never.
What?
Excuse me, Antigone is a beautiful lipstick lesbian jock.
Which is a little bit of a departure for some of your characters, so I'm here for it.
Athletic, I know, right?
And then Zach.
So I think my 10 would definitely be Ingenuity. So the whole reason and logic. And I think for 6s right now, my thoughts are athleticism, shocking. And then probably Logos, because she's not really a people person. She's not going to persuade you and try to influence you, because she's probably just going to be like, I don't have time for your shit, and be out the door.
She knows she's right, and you should know it.
Yeah, and I'm not going to argue with you, because you just need to accept that I'm right. I'm going to leave.
Absolutely. All right, and then so that's everyone's attributes, that's their physical side. The other side of the coin for our characters are their values. These are the things that drive them to be who they are, drive them to be muses, also influence what kind of heroes they resonate with, because obviously they're going to look for heroes that share some of their values, and so that might be a very important component of their success. So what we're using for our system to help us try to focus a little bit on the ancient Greek values. We did a little research. We talked a little bit about the Athenian values that were identified by their culture, the ones that were highlighted in the Odyssey. Just thinking about building a homebrew, we wanted to bring in some of the flavor. You already kind of noticed it with our attributes talking about logos, which was actually an ancient Greek term. It's part of what we eventually became the word technology. So it is sort of wanting to steep what we're doing. What's great about Cortex is we can do it in the culture that we're working from. And so for us, we went with Arete, which if you are a fan of ancient Greece, you may have heard of this term. If not, don't worry, a lot of people probably haven't. It is the concept of, it's the act of living up to one's full potential. In ancient Greece, there was a huge value placed on being the best and standing out from the crowd and trying to approach perfection. So the biggest thing for this value is the character striving for excellence in what they do, and are they fulfilling their purpose? And so that can stand out a little bit because, it's a little bit different from our modern day where you want to be good, but there's also a big emphasis on being, balanced in it. Perfection's okay. You can be really good at one thing. The next one we have is hospitality. In the ancient world, it was powerful. It could ruin your reputation or set you apart. In ancient myths and legends, it was very important. So for our characters, we're asking them, do they value hospitality? Do they show it? Do they live by those rules? And hospitality is kind of the stand-in for our system for kindness and for sort of that like good alignment, because that was sort of more valuable in a lot of ways. It's this reliable behavior. Then we have justice. Do they believe that there is a order to the universe and that it should be followed? Do they believe that there's balance and rewards should go to those who earn them, and also punishments to those who earned them as well? We have truth, which is a little bit different because we're not talking so much about honesty as we are the pursuit of the world's highest knowledge. Philosophers, scientists, and priests have all looked for the truth of the world, and that is this value. Are they pursuing the truth of the world over everything else? Piety, which obviously in an ancient Greek setting where the gods exist, it's probably important for you to have a certain level of piety, although some characters might not. And so this is in the absence of facts, do you trust your feelings and the guidance of the gods? And then lastly, but super important, we have loyalty. As the city-states rose to power in ancient Greece, they did so through collaboration and fraternity. And so when our characters give their word, do they follow through with it? And do they expect others to do the same? And so I'm going to ask the same thing here for all of you, is just which value do you think most exemplifies your character and which value least exemplifies your character?
Before we get started, do we want to keep on the character sheet or do we want to switch back to face cams?
Yeah, let's switch back to face cams now, actually. I just wanted to give Bandit credit for how much I love this character sheet because it's so good.
It is wonderful.
Thank you so much, everybody, for all the... yeah, I enjoy working on it.
You killed it. Now, what is your character's highest value and lowest value?
Yep. Okay. So for Phoebe, her highest value is definitely going to be hospitality, because her kind of defining background is being orphaned at the temple, not knowing who her real parents are. She thinks of this group of people as kind of her parents, and they didn't have to take her in. So she definitely values hospitality the most. I think it might be, and not just because I'm going to be bad at pronouncing it already, might be her lowest. Just because I think she doesn't necessarily believe that you have to be what you're expected to be. So that might be her lowest, but we'll see. That might change as I define her personality a little bit more, but that's where it is for now. Okay.
And then what about for Christos?
I also went with hospitality as my highest one. Kindness is treated in turn the measure of your worth as like a good empathetic person is kind of how you treat other people when nobody's watching. That's the value of a good human being. And my lowest is piety. And the only sentence that really I've gathered so far is the gods never helped someone who didn't help themselves. Kind of a real a lived experience of you only get the things that you fight for. The life that you live is kind of what you've made of it, and no one's just going to hand you a lump of gold and say, things are going to be easy for you. So kind of like his background growing up, kind of rough, has led him to this, can't think, kind of like agnostic view, even though like the gods are real in our setting, kind of just they're self-centered narcissists up on a mountain somewhere. I ain't got time for that.
Excellent. And what about you, Antigone?
Antigone's highest is a reet. She takes joy in perfecting her art, often at the expense of others.
Okay.
And then it might not surprise anybody to learn that her lowest is loyalty. Because as Antigone has lived and experienced, loyalty often infringes upon personal liberty.
And so this is like, that's one of the things I really like about values is like you're putting the dice in there to use them in the game, but also they really make you think about some of these like character qualities. How do they play out mechanically? And so there's, loyalty for Antigone is a lot about freedom, but for others it might be more about like expedience.
Yeah, loyalty to me would have meant giving up my life for a man. And that wasn't about to happen.
No, fair enough. I mean, it's what makes Antigone stand out. Nico.
So for Nico, I was leaning into loyalty being the top pick because for them, it's more loyalty around these like relationships and this like not necessarily like loyalty in terms of like monogamy, but loyalty in terms of taking care of those that also take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
But also with your redefining truth a little bit there at the start, I'm almost wondering about truth in the sense of pursuing like love and erotic love as like one of the highest forms of truth. So I'm going a little back and forth with Nico about that one.
It's funny.
Well, that's why we have these session zeros, so that we can talk about these things.
Before this version of truth, when truth was more like just being honest, truth was my 10. But with it being redefined as like the truth of the world, I was like, no, that's a 6 now.
Oh, see, truth was my lowest one before because I was like, you don't need truth for love things. But now I'm like, ooh, but what if like love and erotic love is the truth? So that's why I'm thinking about that one still.
I see it for you.
That's what makes a good narrative game fun. Like, we use truth, and 5 other settings in Cortex could use truth, and they would all mean something potentially different.
What's that Moulin Rouge quote? The greatest truth you'll ever know is just to love and be loved in return.
I mean, that is a solid, like, reference right there. Also, everybody watching us who might watch us as we actually play Proclaimers of Heroes, be prepared, because there's a lot of pop culture references. I almost forgot to mention that as agents of the muses, they are free. They have access to knowledge of their particular art form throughout history, including modern days. So do not be surprised when we drop a lot of modern references during the game.
As Antigone drops toxic.
Literally.
And then I think Nico's lowest value, I'm kind of leaning into justice right now.
Okay. So what makes you think that Nico doesn't like, or doesn't have justice as their highest value?
This one was a harder one because Nico likes a lot of things is the thing, and I think a lot of things are important to Nico. I think I'm leaning into justice more and looking at justice as like the law of the like the law itself, and Nico doesn't care as much about like legal codes and like the formal laws.
So for Nico, it's the juxtaposition is between the truth of the world and the truth that like men have defined in like laws and order.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially because I think a lot of like formal laws didn't necessarily help Nico as they were growing up. And so they see less value in them.
That's totally fair. That's what makes this interesting. Like, everyone kind of gets their own perspectives. And then Zach.
So I'm kind of torn between my highest for Theodora, between truth and arete, because I feel like both kind of fit her and like what she's into.
Okay, so either the truth of like finding her own perfection or pursuing the truth of the universe.
Yeah. So I feel like that's like a very like I could literally flip a coin for her, I feel like, because I feel like that's very.
If I may offer my 2 cents, given what you said about how her whole thing, especially in relation to history, is telling the true history of events, especially of those who history ignores, that almost makes me think like truth would be like a 10 and then rate would be like an 8.
Yeah.
If you're telling the history, not biased, including everybody, unlike most histories which are told by the winners.
Yeah. No, I think that pushed me into where I needed to be. Thank you. And then for lowest, I also chose piety, but it comes from more of her like having a chip on her shoulder to the gods of why do you only raise up these dude bros, and why, where's everyone else, and you constantly screw over everyone else just because Zeus turned into a goose and had sex with someone, and now we gotta go worry about his child again. So I think it's she knows the gods are real, but she's kind of got a beef with them. I think she would have a beef with Zeus specifically. I think she'd be cool with Athena
Fuck
and
Zeus.
Artemis.
I mean, my character's tagline for piety, because it's one of her higher values, is I owe the female gods a lot. The female ones.
I feel like this.
And
yeah,
Antigone's worldview, there's one good male god. That's Hades.
This is going to be a very down with the patriarchy party.
Isn't it always?
Yes.
Sorry, we are again having technical difficulties.
I wondered if Evan froze.
Evan's frozen, nobody else is. So clearly it's Evan's fault. We all win the game, and we all get 3 extra boons on our character sheets because I said so.
I mean, I think that's.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Temporary game master in Evan's absence.
Wait, does that mean that Evan was the patriarchy?
We did it.
Never.
No,
God, no.
all the cams are messed up.
Everything is awful. Do we want to go to break? Catch a commercial.
Yeah, we can just take a break a little early. Thanks everyone who got through our first part with us. We're gonna reset some Discord calls and see what's going on, and then when we come back, I think we still have 3 more parts on the character sheet to get through. 2,
We got
3.
specialties and resources, and maybe powers if we're talking about those. I don't know yet.
I think we'll
I
get into
just saw you two. God, I hate you two.
Why are the only the 2 of us split in half?
Because the 6 of us,
Sucking darts.
Evan belongs in the bottom row with you 2, and he pushes you over so that you all fit in your frames. And the 3 of us are all already on the top row, which is why our frames all look the same still. Anyway, I'll deal with it later. Thanks for distracting me. Break.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Just a Little Bit and our Wednesday free plays. Tonight, we are doing our session 0, where we are working through Proclaimers of Heroes, a homebrew adventure powered by Cortex. All of our adventurers are taking the parts of Musae, agents of the Muses, ancient goddesses of arts and history, who have been charged with finding heroes out in the greater world. For ancient Greece that we are adventuring in is one of mythology, where heroes and monsters regularly clash and innocent mortals get caught in crossfire. No story is more inspiring, no tale more wider spread than that of those heroes. And so for the Muses, the best way to inspire the arts is to continue to find new heroes. The Musae are forced to rely on the sometimes unreliable auguries of the oracles and the gods as they find new heroes. And so they are given powers from their muses to allow them to take humble heroes and make them legends sometimes. We've met each of the characters of our adventure, Phoebe, Christos, Antigone, Nico, and Theodora, and talked a little bit about what distinctions they have that set them apart from everybody else. These are the core mechanics for their character, their attributes, and their values. So now what we're going to do, since we had a little moment to talk about the characters, is talk a little bit more about the world that they live in. So the world of Proclaimers of Heroes is in ancient Greece, familiar yet slightly different for most of us. Athens and Sparta still battle for supremacy. The city-states are growing. Democracy has found its roots. But magic and the gods exist, and they influence in the world. While demigod heroes like Hercules of legend are rare, mortal agents of the gods, the next step up from priests, are able to directly imbue the power of the gods that they channel and use them. The Musae, for example, use them in their pursuit of creating new heroes. Other gods use them for more personal purposes. And so everybody in the world of the Musae have an agenda and potentially a lot of power to throw around. In particular, the Musae are up against 3 factions that cause them the most concern. That would be the Sirens, being an order of beings very similar to the Musae, but whose job is instead to lead heroes astray and feed off the potential that's lost when they lose out on their fate. The Furies, a order of mystic beings and semi-divine, who seek to drive heroes to madness. They seek to undermine what makes heroes heroes, rob them of their reason, and instead turn them into dangerous creatures. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, there's the agents of the other gods. In particular, there are several gods who have set themselves opposite the Muses. Ares, god of war, has less use for heroes in song and story and much more use for heroes on the battlefield. And other gods, who we'll meet later, have their own agenda.
You can say Zeus. We know it's Zeus.
It's always Zeus.
Zeus might have a few things up his sleeve going on.
More like in his pants.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm just imagining like Zeus in the corner as a goose, just like squawking.
Oh god, I forgot about him as a goose.
But let's be real, it's never actually in his pants.
Yeah, those are rarely attached to his body.
See, that's half the problem.
Boom.
And also, he would be a goose in Evan's campaign, given Evan's deep-seated hatred of geese.
I mean, that's personally true and accurate. And so, whilst trying to fight all of these creatures, the Musae are up against a particular set of stresses. It is stress is a mechanic from the Cortex rulebook that we're using for this. This is a mod that we've plugged in, rather than have hit points, where like in a D&D or other game where you would have a set amount of health, and as it was removed, you slowly got more damage. You have stresses. And they can be both physical and mental or emotional or situational. For us, same thing. Trying to keep the theme of ancient Greece, we went with a slightly different list of concerns and stresses. We have Ill Omen. Ill Omen is all about the dark tidings of fate that can haunt the future of your character. This is dark magic, fell prophecy, and curses that we've seen a million times in ancient Greek stories and legends. Essentially, any of those heroes that have angered the gods, turned the wrong way towards a sorceress and made him or her mad, now has to deal with fate turning against them. And potentially, if things go bad enough, their fate will grow so dark that they will be unable to proceed and they will be taken out of the game. Infirmity covers illnesses and frailty of the body, exhaustion, illness, sort of all of these things coped or kind of lumped together, in part because in this ancient magical and mythological world, there's magic and things like special powers that can help you heal them. Then there is narcissism, as the great Narcissus, who fell in love with his own reflection. Heroes in this world, driven by their desire to be the perfect version of themselves by Arete, are also victim to their own obsessions with their self and pride. So as narcissism grows, the character grows more concerned with their own vanity, their appearance, and their popularity than with their actual job, eventually driven to the point that their narcissism prevents them from functioning. Think of essentially the ultimate influencer who spends all their time attached to their phone and none of their time actually doing their work. Then we have paranoia, which is fear, anxiety, all the doubts that eat away at you. Woe, which is sadness, stress, heartbreak, apprehension, the kind of thing that can prevent a character from going forward. And lastly, wrath. And this is the rage consumed Achilles and robbed Hercules of his reasons during his trials. Once you have essentially been consumed by your anger, all that's left is your desire to destroy. And so these are sort of, these factions and these stresses are what the Musae are up against. This is the risk that they face in doing their job. And so, circling back, we can talk a little bit more instead about a mechanic that helps the Muses. Rather than their own physical abilities, they also have access to resources, another of the modules that we're making use of. And this is representing essentially allies, factions that they belong to, organizations that can help them in this ancient world. The Muses aren't alone. They had a mortal life. They have mortal friends. And so each of them has their own resources that they use to stay connected to the world and are able to help them on their adventures. And so I'd love to hear sort of if anyone has some interesting resources they're using. You don't have to list them exhaustively, but if there's one or two you think is really good for your character, I definitely love to hear it. And if there's anybody in the stream who's interested in, can think of some ancient Greek factions, ancient magical items, things that they could think of as resources, definitely don't hesitate to toss them out, because I will always steal good ideas, and so will the party. But I will say, if you want to if anyone has a thing that they're excited about, we can start with you, Bandit.
Sure. Yep. First one is organization. I put the Priestesses of Delphi, which seemed like a pretty obvious choice. But I also chose as an item a vial of the prophetic vapors from Delphi, which I think is going to be kind of interesting for Phoebe, because she doesn't necessarily 100% believe in the prophecies of the Oracle per se. So she sees it more as like a, just getting good advice. So we'll see how she comes to use that.
Okay. And anyone else have a particular resource that they're super excited about?
I've got mine if no one else wants to go. So obviously Temple of Artemis, because I left the temple under good terms. I can still go back if I need, a favor or some information. An item that Antigone uses sometimes is the Mask of Tragedy. So aside from being the symbol of my particular muse, Antigone can use it to benefit one of their abilities to influence emotion. And then also Deadly Nightshade. Antigone, sometimes as strong as she is and as good of a sword fighter as she is, sometimes needs a little bit of an extra advantage, or just needs to make it look like somebody else was looking to get that extra advantage.
Anybody else have some resources? Anyone else are having trouble figuring out resources too?
So the one resource that I am excited for, I either want to name I don't want her near my purse, or I'm a bird, I'm a bitch. And I just want like a makeup bag.
Okay.
That just, somebody needs to feel real good about themselves. Great, let me fix your eyebrows. Oh, we need to hide from the city guards. Great, you now have a mustache and your hair went from blonde to brown.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that's really cool about Cortex is you, with being a little more narrative, you don't have to justify everything you have on your person. It's not like D&D where you have a list of all of the items, and technically if you're following the game the way you're supposed to, you track all their encumbrances and their weights, and there's a lot of math and spreadsheets. In this game, you can have a sword all the time, and it only becomes that special version of the sword when you use a resource or when you spend some of your abilities to turn it into an asset that helps you out. So it's just really lets you the freedom to say, like, you can work with your environment, you can work with your inventory.
Chase, you need to have a baseball bat that's called Princess Janae from New York.
Because Princess Janae don't beat a bitch.
Stole from her. Sometimes some people steal from you.
I mean, it does appear that I am the most athletic or tied for most athletic, so if somebody needs to be beat, I'm probably the one doing the beating, it seems.
What's your athletic?
8.
Same, 8.
The best two would be like, people would be like, what's New York? And then, baseball bat. I was thinking for mine, I didn't have a particular name, but being a daughter of a wealthy merchant, I was thinking of something like an organization where, like, because I know merchants, like, kind of getting, like, news or info from, like, the trading ships that go around. Like, I'm, like, I could always, like, lean in and be like, hey, what's going on over in such and such? Because, like, I know enough people from, like, what my father did.
Okay.
That effect. So
I
it's
mean,
more like a gossip network almost.
And where did you say your character was Phoebe or Theodore was from again?
Thebes.
Thebes? Because, I mean, it could be something as simple as, like, contact in every port.
Ooh, I like that.
Or
so you could call it Word Around Town.
Word Around Town, yeah.
Ooh, I like that too.
Ear to the ground.
Oh, what's it called? Oral history.
Ooh.
Ooh.
And specifically, it's just it's Theodora's connection to history, but all about, like, gossip.
Love it.
And what about you, Nico? Do you have anything that you've been thinking of as, like, a resource, or are you stumped? Because it's also safe to say that if you're stumped here.
So I'm a little stumped, because I feel like there are a lot of things that could be resources, but I also am having trouble picking between anything. I was sort of leaning into, for Nico, having something to do with, like, satyrs be a resource, because they're very, like, we're sexy drunk beings, we got some pan flutes, like, let's have an orgy.
That time Nico had an orgy with a bunch of satyrs.
That also could work. I have a related yet separate myth that you might be interested in.
I am definitely.
Do you know the Greek myth of the creation of the dildo?
No. We still have to be at least moderately not bad.
Okay, fine. We'll not go with it, and I will just tell you the myth in the group chat after we're done.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're thinking of using that as more like an organization where you could contact the satyrs, or like they gave you an item that you could use?
I was flipping back and forth between the two, because I could also see Nico, like, just having some, like, bomb ass pan flutes that, like, they can play, like, a little romantic melody on. And
I mean, you can have both, because you have 3d6 to split however you would choose amongst your resources. So you could have one resource with 3, you have 2 resources and split it, you could have 3, and each one has a 6. So you could say that you have both a memento of your time with the satyrs and also connection with the satyrs.
So, question for the mechanics of that. Does that mean that if you used a resource that had 2 d6 attached to it, would you roll both d6? Or is it just like because resources are expendable, that you have 2 uses of it?
To my understanding for this one, you could use both of those d6s if you wanted to throw into the dice pool. They're just gone. So what's a little bit different about resources is your attributes, your abilities, your values, your distinctions. Those stick around forever unless you get a special ability that messes them up. There are some special effects you can get later on that say, like, lower this dice value and raise another dice value. Your resources are every session that you get a refresh of them, but then they're gone once you use them in the session. And it's supposed to represent things that like it's probably not impossible for you to like recharge your pan flutes, but they have to like you have to go have like a party to get your pan flutes back charged. So they between sessions will recharge for you. So it's really up to you. If you really are in a situation where you need those resources, you can definitely use them, just knowing that you're not going to get them back.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so yeah, so if you for Nico, if you're thinking like if you want the satyrs, other things could be like the temples of Eros or Aphrodite or Antares, the god of broken hearts. So those are some choices if you want to like mix up the resources that you have available to you. You can also definitely just like we can toss some ideas out in the chat and things like that if there's anything that you want to think about.
That works for me.
Cool. All right, so that brings us to we've covered pretty much everything that we have that are like core things for your character sheets, like for the most part, minus specialties. So the system, we don't have skills. There is no like perception skill. There is no anything else. We just rely on all of your values, your traits, your distinctions. But you can each have 2 specialties, and those are going to be as specific or as broad as you would like. They can be that like I have a specialty in trade negotiation, farming, whatever it may be, juggling. And these are essentially, under these circumstances, is another dice you can throw into your roll when it's relevant. So my suggestion would be like, does anyone have a specialty or something that they think might be a specialty, but they want to like clear it with the rest of the party and figure out what they're thinking about?
Miming.
Ugh. I'm going to say that specialty of miming is not welcome at this table.
So the 2 specialties I was thinking of, I wanted one like all the world is staged, just being able to impersonate somebody, kind of like the D&D, when you use alter self to be somebody, the deception roll you have to make to pretend to be them. But then I also want Q dancer number 3 faster, and just being able to cause a scene or a distraction, or just like this clearly isn't going how it's supposed to go. I'm just going to make this absurd.
I like it. So essentially your specialty for that one is I have a great talent for like just causing a scene. Yeah. I mean, as a channeling the muse of comedy and being a former actor, that's definitely fitting. That's a really good specialty because you can definitely say like, yes, there's these circumstances where it works. So I like it.
On the flip side of that, I think one of my specialties for Phoebe will probably be blending in, and I'm thinking this will probably be more her D6 specialty, just because she is somebody who sees the players on the stage, so to speak, but doesn't necessarily join in to the action. And related to that, her higher specialty will probably be something along the lines of reading people, not quite like Christos. It's going to be more like reading people's emotions and more like insight into people. But those are also, not totally set in stone on those.
Okay.
I don't have any cute names for mine yet. I'm working on it. But the 2 I'm working with right now is one is Spartan training. So, was trained to fight if necessary. So she climbs, she swims, she runs, she fights, all that good jazz. And then the other one is manipulation, just because, being a woman in Sparta, you might not be able to win a physical fight and the laws are against you. So you have to make people think that they should agree with you or they should feel a certain way.
Okay.
So I've got one right now for Nico, and I was just thinking of calling it like the birds and the bees. Basically, they just have a wide range of knowledge about like erotic and romantic topics.
Okay, that's very fitting with your background, as you were constantly being like hired or forced to like help people write love letters and like convince and woo people, essentially.
And I'm still working on a second specialty.
That's fair. Specialties can be tough because they might, it feels like you're trying to fight the game of picking something specific enough but not so specific that like it will never be useful. Don't be afraid to lean on specialties being about something from your background or something like unusual, like something new for your character that you haven't included yet but you'd like to. Like, you have a background within counting, weirdly enough, or you know a lot about ships. Like, they could either be a way for you to reinforce the main theme of your character or to throw in another, like, hey, by the way, I can also do this thing. So, like, Antigone is very, like, in line with the way they've built their character. But, like, the being able to read people is a little bit outside for potentially for Christos. But it makes sense based on Christos' background.
So, new idea. We all take a specialty D8 of yeeting, and then we all take a D6 of agriculture.
A D6, D8 of yeeting and a D6 of agriculture. For those of you who are forced to listen to this reference, we played Tales of Xadia not too long ago, the Dragon Prince TTRPG, and it came up in our playthrough. Yeeting would have been very valuable, to be fair.
It really would have.
I feel like Antigone's probably yeeted someone once in their life, like off a cliff.
But most importantly, because she has access to, future pop culture references, she literally said yeet before anybody else did when she yeeted that thing.
Or did she scream, "This is yeeting," and then kick them off?
Well, let's be honest, if it was Antigone, I would have used the word defenestration.
Defenestration? Okay.
Because it's my favorite word.
I mean, fair.
I'm just imagining now, like, if Antigone were in the movie 300, when what's-his-face goes, "This is Sparta!" and, like, kicks the person, and Antigone runs up and goes, "This is yeeting!"
Again, pop culture references are coming, so be prepared.
I mean, that would... I see that for her.
Yeah. And Zach, how about you? Have you had any thoughts about what you want to specialize in, or...?
I'm still kind of, like, at a loss. Like, I'm, like, debating if I want to, like, dig more into the backstory or kind of have, like you were saying, like, something that kind of pops up that makes it, like, that wasn't anticipated, but, like, maybe, like, they just happened to have this, like, one weird thing they knew about, so...
If you want some more time to think about that, that's totally fine. Okay, yeah.
I could see you knowing a lot about ships. Like, you're a merchant daughter, you had to get on a lot of ships, we might need to get on a lot of ships. We might need
trade negotiation might be a thing, or contract negotiation.
As the muse of tragedy, sinking ships is very much a part of the story.
I was going to say, sinking ships is very much within
ships fall apart all the time.
Antigone's, like, aesthetic.
I was thinking, too, like, something along the lines of, like, maybe, like, more, like, something more broadly of, like, diplomacy, which also is kind of like trade negotiations, but, like, a diplomacy specialty, because, like, even though Theodora herself, like, doesn't like to, like, persuade people, but, like, she, like, knows how to, like, be like, all right, fine, we need to just, like, hash this out. And she's watched enough, like, negotiations that she's like, all right, it's like a dance. I do this, you're going to say this, I'm going to, like, come back with this, and then we're done.
Yeah, I was going to say,
my
also,
feminine alter ego.
If Theodora grew up that way and hates that mindset, you could also think of a specialty that's the opposite of that. So you could think about, like, resistance to negotiation. Like, you can say, like, Theodora has, like, a skeptical negotiator specialty or something, and you can toss it in whenever someone's lying to you, throwing you a bad deal, like when you're trying to figure out if you're getting the raw end of the deal, because you've heard a million merchants try to sell a million different things.
You could call it cut the bullshit.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That I actually like. I do like that.
That fits for her.
Yeah, and I like that aspect more of kind of being like, this is fishy. Like, you have clearly just painted a brick gold. That is not a gold bar.
You could be like, I know Pythagoras. I've heard about this. We get a bucket of water.
She does things.
I'm like, this wine is watered down. What the hell?
This is cheap. So talking a little bit about those things. We've talked about your abilities, your distinctions, your stresses. Now some of the fun things is what we're going to talk about next. So being picked by the muses, you get a little bit more access to things than just slightly more complicated jobs. You also have abilities. So we're using the mod from Cortex called Abilities, which represent all of the godly gifts you have been given as a muse. And so what I did was everyone had a suggested list of abilities that they could think about taking, but for each muse, which I also am going to be putting on our Twitter if anyone's interested in possibly using this setting for themselves. But I'm curious, for your muse, what abilities did you choose? And so I'm having everyone choose one ability as a D8 and one ability as a D6 from the list that you can either have from the list I gave you or from any of the other abilities you have a justification. And let's do reverse order this time. So let's say Zach will go first. I know, I'm putting you back on the spot.
We just had a whole conversation about how we weren't changing the order.
Well, I decided that I changed my mind.
And now I'm skeptical.
Reverse is acceptable.
I did want to ask, because I saw for Cleo you wrote like a custom one down, Echoes of the Past, and I wasn't sure like how you saw that power working per se.
Absolutely. So for Echoes of the Past, I was using precognition as sort of my like jump off point, because you're basically using postcognition. This is your ability to go to a place and see what happened there before. So you walk into the scene of a battle, you can essentially rewind time for your perspective and see what happened there earlier by using a plot point is one option. Another would be the psychometry, psychometry, when you pick up an item and you can get a feeling for like its past. So this really represents your ability as being tied to history to be able to suss out the past of either a person, a place, or an object. And so this is a power that for me, I gave everyone sort of there's a power that helps you in a fight, a power that helps you in like the world in general, and then there's a power that helps you in your investigating as you have to look for heroes. This is supposed to represent your ability to sort of like, is there a hero? Like, I know there's a hero somewhere. I know someone killed this Hydra. Let me rewind time to the Hydra fight to see who it was.
Ooh. Okay. That might change how... So I definitely feel like my D8, I was going to do Taken from History, the summoning.
Okay.
Because I just think that is amazing to be able to be like, hold on, let me look through the scroll, this, and just like pull it out of... In my mind, it like comes out of the scroll. Like I reach in and I just pull it out. So that would be my D8. And then I was going to do History's Lessons, which was the comprehension, but I think I'm actually going to go with Echoes of the Past, because I feel like that fits Theodora more, because yes, she does have like an education, but she never got like she never got to complete her education, which is also part of her whole like she was stopped. So like even though I realize like the comprehension's like a god power that would be given to her, I think more the ability to kind of like feel what's up with the area kind of fits with like her just like aesthetic.
So this is why a good session 0 is helpful, because we can kind of work out the kinks here. Postcognition is something that I made up. We can talk about what so everyone who picks a power, you would get one of, when you look in the book, there's a bunch of lists, like there's a bullet points underneath it of a bunch of different options. You get one from that bullet point list to start off with. I'll give you a bullet point list, Zach, that has some options for you around what we were talking about.
Perfect.
And then let's say Nico, what did you take what powers has the Muse of Erotic Poetry given you?
Nico's taking hydrokinesis. No.
If you could make a justification for it, I would give it to you.
Blood bending.
Oh, that's not the hydro I was thinking about.
See, in ancient Greece, wouldn't it be more like oleokinesis? Like you just suddenly need olive oil?
I was gonna ask a little clarification on the Aeros and Antares that is on the list that you guys made.
So this is another custom one. I'm sorry that I made the two people that I gave really specific custom ones to go first now that I think about it. So Aeros and Antares are the names of the ancient god of love and then heartbreak. And so your ability would essentially be to either inspire the fleeting love that you see in like movies and television shows when someone gets hit with Cupid's arrow, and it's not going to last forever. But while it's lasted, they're like, "Oh my god, I'm in love with you. I've never noticed you before." And then the pig is like, "Oink oink," like, "I don't understand what you want from me." Is that, and then Antares would be the opposite. It would be the ability to inspire this just unexplained dislike for somebody. And so just like where Zach could buy one of those powers I listed, you could kind of buy the, like, I can make someone instantly fall in love for a short period of time, or I can make someone instantly hate each other. And there's a couple other choices under there. But it's basically the ability to mess with people's, not so much emotions, but just their opinions of another person.
Okay. So there's so many good choices. So I think one I definitely want to do is you had one that's Love's Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm going to switch that one probably from the regeneration to healing. So that, because a lot of what Nico does is geared towards other people.
Okay.
And the regeneration abilities, it looked like it was mostly, it would have been just themselves.
It would have been themselves. So this instance, you would like to be able to heal. And so with the healing, the options are usually to heal a specific type of damage.
Yeah.
So for our system, with our stress, is there a particular type of stress you want to be able to heal? Physical ill injury, sadness, anger. What kind of sexual healing are you bringing?
I was leaning towards. Ooh. I think I was leaning towards woe.
Okay.
Like, because heartbreak is included under that, and I feel like that's very much involved with a lot of what Nico does too. So I'm leaning towards healing woe. Whoa.
Okay. And what else is what's your backup? What's your second?
So I like the Aeros and Antares, and I also I also saw one that's What the Heart Wants.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be any illusion, or would it be specifically an illusion conjured from like the person I want to influence?
That would be your choice, because there's a couple of options under that, like under what you would be able to summon. So you have, and so what's great about the abilities, why I picked them, is that they're very flexible. They're meant to be more cinematic than like the spells in D&D, where it's like you have a fireball and that's what you've got. Like, you can't do other things with this fireball. It's a fireball. And this instead, it would be more like you have some flavor of illusion. We kind of work together to define what that illusion is. Is it auditory? Is it visual? Is it a dream? Is it a fantasy?
I like the illusion ability too, like What the Heart Wants, being able to sort of create these scenes that would be pleasing to those that I am working with or I'm trying to inspire.
Yeah, so in this instance, what we might consider to do is the description for your ability would be that it is a fantasy. That's what you kind of summon. And the limitations would probably be that you can't create illusions that people don't like. So you can't be like, I'm gonna make spiders appear and you're gonna hate them.
Blah.
You basically, you can't be the spellcaster who's like, I'm gonna show you your greatest fears. Instead, you have the ability to be like, this is what you truly want.
And it's still spiders.
It's still spiders, because some people are weird out there in the world. I don't know. I won't judge them.
Dost thou want to live deliciously?
If you love spiders and you're watching, I won't shame you.
You definitely need like a bow chicka wow wow sound effect every time Nico uses this illusion.
Absolutely. All right, and so that sounds great. Let's move to Antigone and see, like...
Speaking of people's greatest fears. So my first ability is the custom ability Evan gave me, which is called Suffer as I Suffer. And it's the ability to inflict sudden, debilitating, negative emotion on people. And as we level up, I'll get more emotions. But at the moment, the emotion I chose is insanity.
And we're going to, for the purposes of the stress tracker, we're going to consider that paranoia.
I see it. Yeah, just suddenly, you have stress now.
Yeah, you're just really fucking stressed out because you are going slowly crazy. And it's the kind of crazy of like, Are those squirrels talking about me?
And then I really wanted to choose the other option that you gave me, which is Ocean of Grief, which is like paralytic sadness. But instead, I figured it'd be more appropriate. So my other ability is going to be Catharsis. Because, tragedy is all about you feel all these negative emotions. And then when you get them out, you feel so good afterwards. And you can go fight a war.
It's like you had a good cry. And like
you had a really good cry. And then afterwards, you drink a glass of water and you feel great about everything.
And you pick up your sword and...
You pick up your sword and you go kill somebody.
And this is also, if memory serves me correctly, under the heal umbrella.
Yeah, this is another heal one. Which I might change. So I might change what I'm doing if Tay ends up going for heal, because they're sort of similar. So the one I was gonna pick is I can heal stress related to being afraid or shocked.
So you could basically inflict paranoia, and then you can help heal paranoia. So you are very much like I'm gonna scare you, or I'm gonna help you get over your fears.
Yeah, I'm gonna scare our enemies and then get over. Especially, I figure it's useful fighting the sirens and the furies who inflict madness and paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's appropriate because my muse, her daughters, are the sirens.
Yeah, I mean, it's very thematic. So it's very much sets up your character to have a specific vibe. And what's great is using the system that we use in Cortex, it doesn't have to go as aggressively attack-based. You can still take someone out of a fight using just abilities like making them fall deeply and madly in love, making them feel terribly paranoid and overwhelmed. These can still stop you from being able to participate in the game. So there's no longer playing the game of like, I have to hurt you to take you out. You can now take a lot of like alternate routes to remove people, or just to disable, like to disadvantage them. Because as you apply stress to people, that stress becomes a resource for you.
Yeah, right ahead of a big dueling match, just the night before. Oh, suddenly you're not feeling so great. You should get that checked out.
You can undermine the confidence of your enemies, which puts you in an advantage.
Are you sure the king really believes in you?
Okay, so we have.
What do you think of that?
We have two emotional manipulators in different ways. Not so much manipulators, but like people who play with their emotions in their minds. We have someone who plays with time and summoning. So we have a nice cross section of abilities. What about you? Wow, I forgot the name of your character for a second. Christos. So what about you, Christos?
So I went with Actor's Guise, which we're using off the shape-shifting ability from the Cortex book. Specifically the imitate another character. In the Cortex book, it's, down to their fingerprints and their retinal patterns, like perfect shape-shifting.
Yeah.
I figured it'd be slightly more flavorful to shape-shift into another person or character, but as Christos sees them. So through a slight tint of his own perception or understanding of an individual. So if he likes you, it's probably slightly more flattering. If he doesn't, it's probably pretty bad.
It's an artist's rendition.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
You sat down at the caricature stand,
caricature.
and all of a sudden your nose is 13 times too big, and the artist is like, well, that's how big your nose is.
So is this the one you're going to take as your D6 to represent your, like, you can use it, but you're not the best at it?
Yes, this was my plan
Okay.
for the D6. And then the other one I was planning on taking was But a Stage, which we're basing off of Transmutation. And I was specifically going to pick the one being able to make a asset specific for the situation that calls for it. We don't have a spear nearby, but the hero needs a weapon. I can pick up a stick and be like, boom, now it's the spear that you need. And I just simply
and this
kind
is
of...
definitely supposed to represent that, like, dramatic, like, plays and comedy concept of, like, there always seems to be something around when you need it, like, the pure felicity of, like, a production.
And I just kind of like tying back into the, like, we're helping the hero, so I feel like that's an ability that, like, can help me influence the story, but not quite, always have to be the star of the story.
Yeah, you're not running everything, but you're able to
I can be the sassy companion who says, wait, you forgot your sword, and throw a rock at you, and then you grab it, and all of a sudden it's a sword.
It's very appropriate. And then last but not least, Phoebe, what are your abilities? What have you chosen?
Yeah, so I think for my D8, because I really liked this ability from Cortex, was the players in the story, which is going to be based off the metahuman senses. So basically, because Phoebe's specialty is epic poetry, she understands in kind of a meta sense who like the main characters are of a given story or situation. So it's very much about like identifying the heroes that we're looking for and being able to point out that like, oh, that's, you know, the main character or the sassy best friend. But I think the limitation will be character, not arc. So it's not a precognition type thing. It's more about identifying their general role rather than identifying like what they're going to do. So it's very much based in kind of the present and like reading someone rather than like seeing their future or prophecy, that sort of thing. And for my D6, I think I'm gonna go with author's favor for now, which is luck-based powers, and basically being able to say like, oh, actually, this story would be better if it turned out this way. So, you know, re-roll that die, or I'm not sure the exact special effects.
Yeah,
I
but
also
it's
really
basically
like
luck.
Yeah, essentially luck. But I also like the third choice, which is just being able to adapt myself into situations and become part of the story. So we'll see. We'll see.
That's fair. You can think about it. We're not. This is session 0. We're figuring it out. So we've got a good idea of everyone's characters. Everyone kind of knows each other, so that when we go into the session, we're not going to have to do so much of the like, do I have to worry about someone being able to put my insides back inside my body if I get injured, or help me heal my emotional trauma?
The answer is keep your insides where they belong. None of us are healers.
None of you are healers. Not for that. You are emotional healers.
We're all psychologists.
Yeah. So, and we know a bit about your attributes, a bit about your characteristics, a little bit about the world. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about how we're going to run the game. So we had this conversation in previous games, but I like to revisit it. We're going to talk about the sort of our lines or lines and veils. These represent things that either you absolutely don't want to see, which is more of like your hard line, torture, violence, intimate scenes, for example, kidnappings, anything that would be very triggering for you that you don't feel you want to present in the adventure. And then veils represent things that we more want to move past quickly, or we want to, if we touch on it, we move past it. Sort of fast forward. For us in the past, the example I could think of would be most of us chose that if there's any kind of like intimate relationship, we fast forward. We don't have to pretend like someone's not like hooking up with another character, but we don't talk about it in excess.
We don't RP on stream. Come on.
No, we don't RP on stream.
Save that for the OnlyFans.
So I was going to say, I have a few specific questions that are relevant to this setting. So we're playing in a fantastic mythical Greece, which is great because there's gods and monsters and all this kind of fun stuff. Flip side is Greece does have slavery at this time period. So the number one thing would be, do we want to either put slavery behind a veil or a line, or do we care if it's a part of the storyline?
I think for me, that'd be more of a veil. It's probably not something I want to like unpack as a main part of the story, but also I think just given the setting, that it makes sense that it would at least be present.
And if anyone doesn't feel comfortable talking about this on the stream and they want to talk about it separately, like, we can also feel free to text me or send me a message if you have any opinions and you don't want to discuss it. But this is just, to me, I think about the fantastic versus the historical, and that really strikes me as a potential place for anyone to feel uncomfortable. I, as a GM, will say that I don't like diving into slavery either as a main component. It's just not something that I like to do in my games or my worlds.
Yeah, on that, I would prefer to put that behind a line rather than a veil. Just because, like, yes, we all sort of know that was a part of the time, but it's 2021. We can know it's there, but we don't have to give that the time or the space.
It's a fantastic world. I mean, we're also saying that there's hydras and gods. Like,
there's pop culture references, and yeah.
So since one person in the party feels that way, I'm going to say we're going to put slavery firmly in the line. We're just not going to address it in the stream, we're going to say that, you know, we know it exists in the time period and it's relevant, it's historical, and it's important to think about from a historical concept. But for the game, we don't have to talk about it. I will say, revisiting what we've done before, I know we've put torture, violence against children, and like excessive violence behind lines as well. I assume everyone wants to continue to do that as our previous games. And we've decided to put physical intimacy and like complex relationships behind a veil. For another thing I can think for ancient Greece would be, is there anything monster-wise that would be triggering for anybody? Like, I very rarely put giant spiders into things. I don't like them. But if anyone now has like a weird thing about like Scylla and Charybdis, hydras, like dracons or something, like if you, no one will be, you know, it's not a problem if anyone has one. I just like to know if there's anything they'd like to avoid. And again, feel free to think about it. Send it to me later if you don't. You have time to think about these things.
Now I'm sad there's not going to be giant spiders, so I don't know how I feel about this.
The price you pay for having me as the GM. I don't like to think about their weird little mouths.
So I need to just find that Disney picture and pull that up and put that as the background of our stream from now on. Of Evan just like face buried in his hands, freaking out about giant spiders.
It was the weird. How dare you? How dare you call that?
I know which photo you're talking about.
It was the weird giant spider at the Harry Potter thing, and I'm just gonna say I don't like spiders, so I just covered my eyes. I chose to opt out of that experience.
To be fair, I have been on that ride many times, and that is a weird, creepy room because they're everywhere.
Yeah, it's. I have had a huge thing about giant spiders ever since Jumanji, so you can blame Jumanji. That movie scarred me as a child.
I feel like you can blame Jumanji for a lot of things.
Yes.
Jumanji is one of 3 movies in it that, growing up, like, I could not be in the house if you were going to watch them.
Hashtag furries.
The other one was Zathura, which was Space Jumanji.
Oh, really? I didn't find that one as nearly as triggering.
I don't know why. That and 8 Below, because the leopard seal comes out of the whale. And that was, I was not okay with that moment.
Wait, what was Space Jumanji?
It's called Zathura, I think? I don't know.
It's literally it's board game.
It's Jumanji, but instead of being a jungle board game, it's a space board game.
Yeah. And then the important thing I would say is are any of the stresses that we're using uncomfortable for anybody? Is there anything that people would feel uncomfortable with, like rage, grief, etc., etc.? I'm going to say for myself, when we talk about like the 12, where somebody is so filled with it that they're overcome with their emotion, is for me goes behind a veil. We say mechanically your character is consumed with your rage. They are, you know, going to go do something else to deal with it. We're not going to like dwell on any of it. It's just it happens and we move on.
I think that sounds good to me.
Okay. Again, same thing. Think about it some more if there's anything. So I feel like unless anybody has something specific they want to send to me later, that covers the key themes that come out in my mind. But also, if anyone has anything they want to toss on the table.
Can I just ask like a theme question in more of a general sense?
Absolutely.
I think a big question for me as I'm building my character is whether we're doing more of like a magical action comedy or more of like a dramatic fantasy emotional moment. You know, basically dark and gritty or like fun and cheery. And I realize it's kind of a spectrum and we can play around with it, but just kind of wondering if we're leaning one way or the other.
No, that's a very fair point. I would say for me, the way I'm kind of approaching it as the narrator is that there's going to be very strong themes for the emotions, for the values, for the virtues, where they all come into play, so we get to see them and play with them. But there is a lot of humor. There's a lot of comedy. So feel free to have some fun with your characters. It's not punishing. So we're definitely not in the realm of like, I'm gonna find your weakness. I'm gonna hit you on it a million times until you like your character's an emotional wreck. But there definitely is going to be like the whole point of, even if you found a hero that might not be ready to be a hero, you're gonna get those. The goal would be to get you to those awesome moments where you're like, I've done made this person a hero. Like, that's my baby going off to war.
Yeah,
all grown up and saving China.
Well,
But yeah, so that would be sort of the theme that I'm trying to strike that middle ground of we're going to have fun. We're going to have our break the fourth wall, make a lot of pop culture references, but I also want you to have the cool moments of like, we did these awesome things as your muses. Yeah. And like, obviously your characters have some cool hooks in their background, complicated relationships with their parents, escaped arranged marriages, successful but slightly unsuccessful career in acting. So all the stuff that comes with it is stuff that like we're still going to delve into.
So my perception of it was we're going to lean into the comedy side of it, and we're going to have spurts of, hey, let's talk for real about somebody's backstory for a minute or what's going on, and then okay, cool, back to kind of cartoony fun.
Yeah, and that's very much like the vibe that we want to go with, is like we're having fun, we're telling some crazy stories. There's myths and legends, you're gonna meet some gods, you're gonna meet some of their agents, so like, but you're gonna also have cool action moments as well. I know that doesn't really answer the question because it's kind of just both.
No, yeah, I think it does, because it's very much a discussion, so that's an answer that I was looking for, so that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, and if anyone feels strongly one way or the other about these things, like, feel free to bring it up to me, because we can tweak with the tone that we're going with. Like, I think I was thinking a little more serious originally, but people really seem to enjoy the ability to just kind of cut loose and kind of do the break the fourth wall. Everyone knows everything about pop culture. And I said, as a GM, let's do this. It sounds fun.
I mean, I think striking that, like, because the story, especially when you're dealing with heroes, good stuff's going to happen, bad stuff's going to happen. And so, like, us breaking the fourth wall and being almost the comedic relief. If this was a movie, we're the comedic relief.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it helps strike that balance more naturally rather than having to, like, shift it. Like, we're going to do the shifting ourselves.
Yeah.
Especially
I'm going to throw some scenarios.
And me in the same group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to throw some scenarios at you, and then you can kind of choose to, like, oh, I really like this character. We're actually going to try to do a really good job this time, and it resonates with my character's backstory. Or you can be like, this is the worst hero ever, and we just need to, like, cobble a plan together and get him out the door.
He doesn't have to be
pigs
perfect.
on hang gliders.
Yeah.
We let you smoke break.
Yeah. Where it was both the awesome moment of, like, redeeming Feathershaw, because that was really cool and felt like more, but then also it was pigs on hang gliders. So that's Tales of Xadia. Dragon Prince, like, we're doing some humor, we're also doing some cool stuff.
There's definitely going to be one of those, like, I love all my children equally, and then it cuts to, like, us bad-mouthing the heroes, and we were like, oh god, they were terrible, but, like, you know what? We got them to college, we got them out the door, God bless, we got them, like, they're
I love all my heroes equally. I don't care for Perseus.
I also am imagining that, like, treading the line between, like, epic adventuring, like, comedy as what happened at the very end of our Tales of Xadia, where you've got Joey, your character, who's like this epic flying down with this giant special item,
and then just fully crash landed.
And then you critical fail 3 times.
I'm still not okay about that.
When I think about it, I think about Hercules and Xena when they hit, like, their middle season, where, like, they would still have these really cool emotional moments, but then they would have, like, ridiculous side characters and, like, crazy things going on. It's that. So there's still good stuff in there, but, like, it's not like, oh, this has to be the most dramatic thing we've ever done.
You mean like when Xena did a somersault off a tree branch and, like, somersaulted for 5 miles onto a boat to save her girlfriend, basically?
Even just talking about it makes me want to go back and rewatch Xena, because I probably rewatched it like 50 times. And so to the universe, I say thank you, Lucy Lawless and Xena, because this is why we're sitting in this table right now, getting ready to play this game.
Love it.
Yeah, personal shout out to Lucy Lawless.
Specifically Lucy Lawless, not the other one.
Not the, I mean, yes.
Not the man.
Not the man. I mean, of course not the man. Also, full credit to Renee O'Connor as Gabrielle as well, because I definitely identified strongly with the Gabrielle energy. All right, so we've got through our abilities, got through our lines and veils. I think the only other thing to talk about before we get started with our first session is there's some rules that are different that we're using for Tales of Xadia, which is our first experience playing Cortex, which you can catch on our YouTube. There's a couple of things that we're doing different. One of the biggest things is there's this concept called hero dice, So when you get a heroic success, which is when you beat my challenge or whatever roll I made by more than 5, you can spend a plot. You can basically, just as getting it, you can take the dice that is the largest dice from your opponent's dice pool and store it, and it becomes a resource for you. And so you can say, oh, I beat this person and their highest dice was a D6 and I had a heroic success. I'm going to take a little bit of their good luck, their energy, and put it into my character sheet. You now have a D6 that you could add to it. You can add it to a dice pool ahead of time and just roll it. And it was fine. You can add it to a dice pool after it's rolled. So if you roll and you realize you've gotten an 8 and you need more die, you can say, I'm going to roll this D8 after the results. It's one of the only times you can roll a dice after you've actually seen what's on the table. Or you can...
Does that require a plot point?
Let me double check for that one, because that is... Hero Dice is new for me too, so that's a great question.
From what I read, adding it to a pool of your own doesn't require a plot point. We as muses get the special ability to spend a plot point to give it to a hero.
So when you have the hero dice, you use a plot point and roll the die, adding it to your total in any test or contest. You may do this anytime after rolling the die to get the total, even if you've rolled first and the opposition has rolled their own dice.
Therefore, my die was wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And then is the hero dice die like Bardic Inspiration one-time use, or is it once you get it for like the whole scene?
Once you get it, you spend it. It's like inspiration. And you can actually store more than one size of dice. So you could have a D8, a D6, and a D4, for example. You cannot have multiples of that kind of dice, though. So that's also one of the advantages of your ability. So as muses, each of you has the ability, when you have a hero dice, to pass it on to a hero. So if you're helping Theseus, you can be like, here, Theseus, I thought of you and I got you this like cloak that will help you get through here. And you can give them that hero dice because you have some control of the narrative. You had this awesome moment, so you get this advantage. You can pass it on to heroes as like fate. And so then you can basically use it to help you bump up your heroes and power them up. So there's a little bit of like, you want those dice to stack the deck in your hero's favor.
A little bit of clarification. So I believe we're also using the hero dice as plot points mod.
Yep.
Which is what changes the cost effect of adding the die to your pool before rolling.
Yes.
Is that correct?
So with the heroes, sorry, you're right. Thank you for reminding me because I wasn't sure about that when I added it later. So you can roll the dice in your pool with no cost if you roll it ahead of time. So I'm putting my dice pool together. I can pick that dice up, add it. That doesn't cost you anything because it's basically available to you. If you use it after the roll, that still costs you a plot point.
Got it.
And then also if you have hero dice and you need a plot point, as long as it's larger than a 6, I believe, you can use it in place of a plot point. So say you're totally out of plot points, but you have a D8 lying around in your hero dice pool, you can be like, I'm just going to burn this D8 so I can use this special ability. It's because it's all, the way we're treating it is it's all luck. It's all chance. It's all fate. It's all the world. It's the story. It's the story, basically. And then the last thing is you can use it as an effect dice. So say you roll it out and you won, but you didn't end up with any effect dice in your pool. You can just say, I'm going to use my hero dice as my effect dice instead of one of your existing dice. So again, if you fished up a D12 from somebody, you could save that and really mess up an enemy by being like, here you go, here's the D12, have a great day. Yeah, so that's big change for us. We'll go over it again before we actually play, but I wanted to toss it out for everybody. It's on page 30 if you want to reference it. Then we're also using, this is more for me than for you, we're using the Doom pool and the Crisis pool. So what's a little bit different is when you roll your hitches, when you roll those ones, I can still give you stress like I would before. I no longer have my own personal bank of plot points. Instead, what I have is, as an option against giving you stress, I can say, here's a plot point from the bank in the middle of the table. I'm going to take one of those dice, and just like a hero dice, I'm going to add it to my pool of dice. And it works very similar. So I can, whenever we do a challenge or a test, I can look at my pool of dice, pick the dice that I want, and use those for the challenge. If I pick them ahead of time, they stay in my pool. If I add them to a roll, I lose them from my pool. So there's no more like flat difficulty dice. I just have a pool, which is great because if you get real lucky and my pool gets smaller and smaller and smaller, that means you've successfully dealt with all the problems in the story. But if you have weird hitches and mistakes that you make in the middle, like you have a bad negotiation, then I go, oh, thank you for this D8. I'm going to add this to my pool. And so you have this visual representation of like how bad the story is going for you.
I like that.
Yeah, and so that changes things a little bit because that means that if I want to use like special effects for my characters, like when I have my NPC characters, I have to get rid of dice. So I'm always playing with my dice pool, so like it makes things could go really good for me if I get like good dice and you roll poorly and you get hitches, or like things can go very poor. So everything's supposed to feel cumulative, essentially. And then from that, rather than use, because they had we did challenges a lot in Tales of Xadia, I can take my Doom pool, and if you're facing something like a forest fire, I can be like, this forest fire is 3d6s. If you want to get past this forest fire, you have to beat those d6s. So I can essentially create dangers in the world from my Doom pool. But that also means that in general, I have to think about how often I'm doing stuff like that to you as an adventuring party, because I'm spending my resources.
It's a nice way of letting us kind of see more of the big picture, which is an interesting like thematic.
Yeah. So the biggest mechanical difference for all of you as players would be you roll a 1. I have the choice of either saying, here's some stress, here's a complication, or I'm going to take one of your dice and add it to my pool. And so it kind of sets up this concept that, like, I get to play around with chance and fate a little bit more. The advantage, again, like I said, is if I get unlucky, you might be rolling against 2d6s for the entire adventure.
So you're a dice leech.
I'm a dice leech. Stealing dice, using them for my own purposes. And so, like, we can talk that over again before we actually play, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Those are the 2 big mods I'm thinking of using. They change the way some of it works. I think I'm leaning in towards being more mythic and more, like, cinematic. It definitely represents that, like, at some point you made a deal with an evil merchant and you, like, screwed him over, but you rolled a hitch, so he knew you screwed him over, so, like, he comes back to bite you in the ass later.
I like it.
Yeah, or you like set off an alarm, and so now later on when you fight more of the army, they know you're there, so it's harder because they have more time to be prepared. So it's all consequences, essentially. So those are my big things. I think we know everyone's characters. We talked about our lines and veils. I think this would be my open time. If anyone has any questions like Bandit did about the tone or about like expectations, I would love to hear them in the next few minutes.
Just a little bit of I feel like so good. I didn't mean to do that time. Could we potentially redefine my muse a little bit to include a little more of the romantic love too, so I'm not just like a sex monkey?
Yes. My original intention was that it's more romantic poetry.
Okay.
Yeah. It is Hellenistic Greek sort of mode of there isn't something unseemly about physical love. It is part of a romantic love. So they intermingle.
Okay, that's how I've been like trying to picture it, but I just wanted to clarify.
No, yes. You are not in any way obligated to be like a weird caricature of like a creepy guy trying to hit on everybody. You can definitely be like, I'm in love with love.
I love love.
But we are definitely in an ancient Greek setting. There is that component of like, you have a physical body. That's fine. That's cool. It's no big deal.
Here's a vase. I painted it on it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just that mix. So yeah, but like I'm certainly comfortable with that specification, and we can consider that sort of the lines and veils thing. I would say the super sexual side of the erotic poetry, we can kind of put behind that veil of it's out there. It's just not something we're going to worry about for your character. And so,
question I have, because in the process of making and deciding that we were going to do this, we've sort of gone back and forth of, and always if you don't want to tell us, you don't want to spoil the surprise of, like, whether are we like the sidekicks of heroes and we're following along and helping them along their way, or we also talked about one point of like, oh, we have to find a hero and he's terrible, and so we have to become the heroes. Like, which story are we following?
both. I will say that all of you are muses and have been musi for before. Like, we're going to play that you're a little experienced. You would know, having talked to other musi, sometimes because you're relying on the gods and fate to like direct you to a hero. Every once in a while you get like, I'm Poseidon and I have a demigod son. You need to go and make him a hero. And you get there and you're like, oh no, he's a nightmare. Like, he is a chauvinist, or he's stubborn, or he's dumb, or he is like obsessed with combat and doesn't want to do any of the good stuff. And sometimes you find like legitimate heroes, or maybe heroes that just have problems. Like, oh, you're a good hero, but you're like a pig farmer and you're in love with another farmer, and the problem is that you don't want to do the heroic thing you're supposed to do. I have to convince you to do it. So expect us to play with the tropes of like, what is a hero? Who makes a hero? Is there any such thing as a hero being a hero on their own? Very much that, like, is there such thing as a self-made man?
I almost picture, like, when we come across kind of like a dud hero, it's like us in the background maybe doing the actual heroic things, but we like shove them out in front of like the crowd, and then we're like, they did this. Because like, we need to get the story right. Like, they're terrible, but like, it's fine.
And that's where I play with the whole
I'll
concept
visit him
of,
later. I'll ruin his life.
Comedy and the seriousness of the campaign is that there's going to be times where you're like, well, we just got to make this work. Like,
which I feel like, speaking for Theodora, like, that would be one of her kind of like, that's part of her sticking point, is kind of like, why do we, like, this person's terrible, but we have to like raise them up? And it's like kind of coming to terms with like, yeah, we found Poseidon's demigod son and he's an asshole, but like, that was the assignment. So
yeah, I wanted to embrace that like ancient Greek concept that like there is that like imperfection in a lot of the heroes. There's the heroic flaws, and you as the muses kind of have to like deal with it. The gods want you to do something, and they have a lot of power and influence, and you probably want to be on their good side.
The hubris is just everywhere. It's like a sea we have to swim
The
through.
privilege. What privilege? And I'll say, like, unless anyone has any other questions, tone, campaign, mechanics, like, toss it out there. No? Okay, awesome. So then I will say, let's consider this a wrap up for our session 0. You know how to get to me if you have any other questions. For those of you watching, thank you for watching with us and joining us on our session 0. We are going to be running our first adventure for Proclaimers of Heroes, as long as it's cool with everyone's schedule, next Wednesday. I'm going to let everyone shake their head or yes or no if they. Okay.
I'm good.
Next Wednesday at 7:30, you can join us for Adventure 1 of Proclaimers of Heroes, where we join the muses before the Academy of Athens. They have been called there by their muse patrons to take on a new hero's quest. And so we will see, who do they help? How do they help? Is it a worthy hero or a hero that's a fixer-upper? So if you want to join us next Wednesday at 7:30, and then this Sunday we will be doing our normal D&D campaign at 7:30 as well. And people are obviously welcome to join us. If you have any questions, you can always feel free to reach us at our Twitter, which you can find in our About below. That's will also be posting some resources about the settings of Proclaimer of Heroes and some of the awesome other resources that we've been putting together. For those of you who want to return back to your normal life, you are welcome to do so. For those who are thinking about maybe finding something else to watch after that wrap up, you want to find another adventure, we're actually going to be raiding over to some friends of the campaign, Oathsworn RPG. They are also homebrewers. They're homebrewing in a more classic fantasy setting, but they are starting their adventure. So if you are interested in sticking around, you can join us on the raid, say hello, meet some other people who are equally passionate about being nerdy in games. For the rest of you, though, and for the internet out there, stay safe out there.